The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report, our fifth podcast of the week. A 5 for fiver, a fiver, a 5 spot, whatever you want to call it. We have coming up a little bit later from hitfix.com, Alan Sepinwall, but right now on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs and one of my favorite people in sports, Mr. Brian Burke. What's happening?
Not too much. How you doing, Bill?
Are you watching these playoffs?
Absolutely.
Best playoffs in a while? Average playoffs? Half decent? What's your ranking?
I think they've been exceptional right from the first round. I thought the first couple games and a couple of the series they kind of stumbled into it in the Boston-Montreal series, but I thought the games after Game 3 and all the series and immediately in a couple of them were good. I think the playoffs in the NHL are the best playoffs in pro sports.
All right, make your
Obviously,
case
I work
for
in
that.
hockey, but I think they've been exceptional.
Make your case for why it's the best playoffs in all pro sports.
I think first off, with the new system, there's parity. I think that the prospect or the chance of an 8 seed beating a 1 is very real. I think that the games acquire so much meaning. The players play so hard. The intensity level is jacked up so high right from the get-go. I think it's the hardest trophy to win, and I think they're the best playoffs.
When I watch I've been watching much more than usual this year, and it just seems like there's no great team. All right, just with the way this hard cap is and all that stuff, will we ever see a great hockey team again?
Well, I think a couple of great teams have won cups in the post-cap era. I can make a case that our team in Anaheim that won is a team that could compete in any era against any team. I think the fairer comment is it's hard to keep a great team together. I think there have been some great teams that won the cup. I think in a salary cap system, a hard cap system, it's harder to keep your team together. We had to take our team apart to a large extent. Chicago did last year. But there's nothing wrong with having a different champion every year either. That the old dynasty, Detroit and New Jersey winning 3 cups in 6 years, that was great if you lived in one of those two cities. It wasn't a whole lot of fun for the rest of the league. So I like the hard cap. It really comes down to managerial ability. Everyone's got the same amount of money. And then if you have to retool, you have to retool.
So the NBA might be gravitating toward a hard cap.
Well, all I know is what I read. I mean, we own a basketball team, but I am not involved in the running of that team and not involved at all in the collective bargaining. So that what's about to follow is just what I read, following the Sports Business Daily, which I read every day. Right. And it looks like that's a central part of their proposal is a hard cap at some point. I think the latest proposal includes a phase-in.
So my question was going to be, once we get that hard cap in the NBA, which I think will happen, not as many players per team, do you think you'll see the same kind of turnover we're seeing in hockey, or will it be different in the NBA?
Well, I can tell you, I think you'll see the same kind of turnover. But I can tell you, again, if you're a Boston Celtics fan, you might think the current setup is great. If you're a Red Sox fan, you might think the current setup is great. And yet, right down the road in Foxborough, the Patriots in a hard cap system have managed to be competitive and win a couple championships as well. So I'm not so sure that if you live in Kansas City, you think the current baseball deal is great. Yeah. Or that if you play for the San Diego Clippers, you think the current deal is great. So to me, a hard cap system produces parity, it produces equity. I think our system has allowed every team to be competitive if they're well run. And certainly we believe in the system that we have. I can't speak for the NBA, but it sure sounds like they're moving that way.
You and I have gotten to know each other a little bit from the Sloan Conference at MIT every year, which your daughter's involved with, actually. One of the things that interests me about you and how you've handled, running hockey teams is that you're really fascinated in what guys are doing, not just in your sport, but in other sports. And a guy like Bill Polian, who's a close friend of yours, you go and you spend time with these guys. They spend time with you. I remember at the conference like a year ago, Polian went with you to go scout a hockey player and he just wanted to go because he wanted to see if he could pick up anything from you. Why don't more people do that?
Well, first off, let me make a disclaimer. I don't think Bill Polian's ever learned anything from me. I was flattered to read that when you wrote that. I thought it was a very kind remark, but I'm not sure how much factual veracity there is to it. I admire Bill a lot. We're good friends. He is my mentor and my hero outside of the hockey world. To go to your larger question, what I have found in my career is that guys tend to know the GMs from the other sports in their town. So that, Peter Chiarelli, I'm sure knows Theo Epstein. I've never asked him. I don't understand that. I've always done that as well. But in my opinion, you can learn. There is a stolen idea has the same value to me as an original idea.
Right.
And so if I can go to training camp with the Colts or the Saints, when Mr. Finks was running the New Orleans Saints, I went to training camp with them twice. I've gone to spring training. I went last year, met the Jays folks. I've gone to the Red Sox. I mean, anything, I feel that inventing something a second time is really a dumb use of time. If I can go and steal one idea, I mean, I don't know if they still do because I've been gone for a while, but when I came back in 1998 to run the Vancouver Canucks as a general manager, they were still using the accounting system that I had stolen from the Saints back in '87.
Right.
They just had a superior accounting system, and I spent 2 hours with their CFO, and I said, boy, you guys, this is way more streamlined than what we're doing, so we switched it within 60 days. So I really think there's value there, and I don't think you should limit it to the town or city that you work in.
The whole statistical movement, which is part of what that conference is about, for some reason hasn't trickled into hockey like it has with some of these other sports. There's some of it, but not a lot. Do you ever see that changing, or is hockey just a sport that you can't really measure with statistics?
I keep looking at these things, Bill. I really believe I probably get 10 of these a year, maybe more, and where someone will say, here's a new scouting system, or here's a new way to rate players, and then we have a better statistical model. And, the sport that lends itself best to statistical analysis is baseball.
Yep.
It's a series of one-on-one confrontations that are repetitive. It screams for statistical analysis. Football, you line up, you run the play. It screams for statistical analysis and film analysis. Our game is way more spontaneous. We use films for systems and tendencies, but really great players aren't going to do the same thing every time. So I don't think it has the same benefit. But you pride yourself on being a modern thinker, and you think to yourself, well, I'm not going to say no to any of these. I'm going to look at them or have someone on my staff look at every one I get and see if there is a better mousetrap. Because if there is, we want to find it.
It seems like out of all the four major sports, the performances of hockey players vacillates the most. Like the Bruins have Michael Ryder, who has been great in the playoffs, and he, is somebody that's probably been a little bit spotty over the course of his career. Or you look at somebody like Tyler Seguin this round, who all of a sudden blossoms into the guy they thought they drafted. What is it about hockey that it's so up and down, up and down, up and down with some of these guys? Well,
I look at Carl Crawford and his start, and now he's had 3 walk-off hits in the last couple of weeks. Not that I'm a Red Sox fan or anything.
Right.
But I look at that. To me, I think you get vacillating performances in every sport. I think it's part of human nature, and an athlete can't be at peak performance at all times. The examples you gave, though, like for Tyler Seguin, for me, there's no question that Tyler Seguin is going to be a good hockey player. That was clear in his draft year.
Yeah.
The question is how quickly he's gotten there, and the critics will say after a 4-point period, the critics will say, well, Claude Julien should have played him more. Guys like me that believe in development, I like all my guys to spend time in the American League, and this kid hasn't spent any time there, will say, well, see, Claude was right. By bringing him along slowly, now the kid's capable of stepping up. And it's one period of one game. So,
right.
But Tyler Seguin is going to be a really good player, whether that's right now, whether the other night was an aberration or not. I mean, we knew that was the risk when we made this trade with Boston for Phil Kessel. You're talking about if it's a top pick, it's Taylor Hall or Tyler Seguin, and they're good players.
Well, let's talk about that, because you made a trade, pretty controversial. You make a trade like that, and you're hoping, all right, hopefully this pick won't come back to haunt us. It ends up being top 2 in a draft that had 2 potential superstars, and now Sagan's playing well. Do you take heat in Toronto for this, or is it just they love Kessel and they're fine with it?
Well, I don't know if I don't pay much attention to the media, so I don't know if I'm taking heat for it or not. My view on these trades is I care what I get. I care about that. That's the only thing I lose sleep over. I don't lose sleep over what I pay.
Right.
When I made the deal for Chris Pronger, we won a cup with him. I paid a horribly high price. If you analyze it, you're like, holy cow, the only way that makes sense is if you have the parade. I felt we needed to put a top six, a top first-line winger in. We're happy with the guy he got. He's 3 straight years over 30 goals, and when our team without a true number one center. And so we're happy with our value, and I think Boston's going to be happy with their value. They got Tyler Seguin. They have another first this year, and they had a second from last year. I think Peter Chiarelli would tell you that he'd make that trade again, and so would I. So that's the best kind of trade is a trade that works for both teams.
So you are a fan of paying for the most premium possible talent. That's a tactic that you like to do.
Yeah, I believe in stars. I believe if you want to win, you need stars. If you want to fill your building, if you want to have an exciting team, you need recognizable star caliber players. I've always had them. I always will.
So you then approved of the Knicks. Some people thought they overpaid for Carmelo Anthony, but that's a trade you would have made. I agree with you, by the way.
I don't know enough. Like this is, someone asked me the other day if Brian Colangelo and I compare notes.
Yeah.
And he, of course, is the GM of our basketball team and a really good guy. I'm really happy he just got a contract extension. I don't know enough to give him any help. I don't know enough about basketball. So I will tell you, I remember the bones of the trade. I remember the media reaction. And what I would say is, on every trade like that, Phil Kessel, Tyler Seguin, this trade for Carmelo Anthony, you've got to measure trades with a calendar, not with a stopwatch. And you've got to do years, not months or weeks or hours.
Yeah.
And so to me, if Phil Kessel gets us where we need to go faster than we would have, then someone could still say down the road, well, look what these guys that they took with the draft picks have done. If Phil Kessel gets us in the playoffs next year, I'm going to say, who cares? I hope they do well. I hope Tyler Seguin plays well, and I predict he will. So on this trade, I would say in general, it has to stand the test of time, but in general, yeah, if you end up with the best player in the trade, then typically it gravitates that it makes sense that you've made the better of the deal.
How close is your team? Because you almost made the playoffs this year. If you'd gotten in, would you have made some noise?
Yes. My goal is not to get in the playoffs and get our ass kicked in the first round. I've done that. It's no fun. It's not very satisfying. All it lets you do is turn to the media and say we made the playoffs.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that. I want to have a parade in Toronto someday, and we've taken steps to build our team over the long haul. Our oldest defenseman is 25 years old. You look at Phil Kessel, who's our leading goal scorer. He's 22 or 23 now. So we're trying to put a young group together that can grow. I really like our defense. We're a player or two away.
So you say you don't pay attention to the media, but being in Toronto with that tortured history there, you must feel that history, right?
Well, the history is something it's interesting you bring that up because people say 1967, and that was our last cup in Toronto, 1967. 1972 was Boston's last cup. I don't think in a 50-year period, roughly, there's a lot to argue about over a period of futility. 1975 was the Flyers' last cup. And how about never, for a whole bunch of teams who have never won a cup?
Yeah.
Including teams that came in 68, some of those expansion teams that have never won and came in a year after our last cup. So I think it's overstated. The record for futility, I think, is overstated. But I will tell you this, and I said this very publicly, and I believe it, and we're sticking with it right now, but once the season begins, I am sick and tired of this group of athletes apologizing for decades of failure or mediocrity. This group is not responsible for anything that happened before they got here. And I think the losing, because it's brought up so frequently, has become a bit of an albatross or a millstone.
Yeah.
And so I've said to our players and said to the media, we're not apologizing for 1967. I was 12. I was 12 in 1967. If you're a Maple Leaf fan and you want to complain about what happened between 1967 and when I got here 2.5 years ago, you got a lot of people you got to call before you get to me.
You know what it is, though, because we went through this with the Red Sox, and, my dad is a diehard Bruins fan, and I was with them until Jacobs did some things I didn't agree with. I've been slowly getting pulled back, but, you have this baggage from these experiences that you remember with the uniforms and the teams. And after a while, the fans start expecting that just the worst possible thing is going to go wrong at all times. That's where the Red Sox were before 2004.
That's right.
It seems like the Maple Leaf fans are a little bit like that. They just expect things to go wrong.
Well, I think they were pretty happy with our second half. I mean, if you go from the All-Star break on, I think we had the third highest point total in the NHL, including beating some divisional opponents that we've had a real hard time beating in Buffalo and Boston.
Right.
I think we really got a grill off our back with those wins. So I think our team is better and closer than people think, and I think if we can do some things this summer, that we intend to be a playoff team next year. We've said that every year I've been there, that that's our goal, but never said that we're going to make it. But we intend to be next year, and we think we took some big steps this year.
Doesn't part of it have to do with Toronto, even though it really has 3 professional sports teams? I mean, they care about the Maple Leafs more than everything else combined. It's a giant city. It's hockey. It's Canada. You know, I think the same thing is with Vancouver with the Canucks, and they've never won a Stanley Cup. It means more in Canada. It's really hard to find more than 15 professional sports franchises in America in any sport that care about their sports as much as they do about hockey in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver, and even Edmonton. Do you agree with that?
Yes. There is no analog for it. I try and explain, I was born in Providence, Rhode Island, but I grew up in Minnesota. And I try and explain to my American friends what the role of a general manager is in a Canadian city. And there is no analog for it. It's like if you took the general manager of the Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics, and Patriots and rolled them all into one.
Yeah.
That's about what it would be as far as the prominence, it's the general manager of a Canadian team, if he says he's going to talk to the media, there's a full-on scrum there. I mean, there's 20 cameras, and there is no analog for it. It's not a sport here. This is not like Patriots fans, who are great fans. This is not like Red Sox fans. This is a cult. Like this city here, I'm in Vancouver, this city is crazy about their team right now. Nuts. Nothing like you'd see in an American city with another sport, even in the great sports cities like Boston.
I agree with you. It's the only comparison really is like English Premier League soccer.
Yeah, and I think I'm not sure that with 82 games, their schedule lends itself to be. You don't have to be a big fan. I don't know how many games they play. I don't like soccer.
Yeah.
16 games. How many games do they play?
They play like basically once a week. They play more than 16. I think it's like 28. Something.
All right,
like
so you got to get up for 14 home games if you're a Tottenham fan or Wigan or something. I don't know any of the teams. Man U. So you got to put on the red paint and the scarf and all the other stuff and get hammered and sing, 18 times, say, instead of 41 times. So I don't think it's the same, but it'd be the closest thing.
So Vancouver, you were there. If they won the Cup, try to explain to the audience what that would be like if Vancouver won a Stanley Cup.
Well, I would. It would be if anyone saw the visuals during the Olympics when Team Canada won. And you're talking about, my wife and I had to walk back, obviously from being involved with Team USA. We had to walk back to the hotel we had to walk probably 8 blocks, 10 blocks from the arena. The streets were packed, like not crowded, packed, densely packed with excited fans, no drunkenness, no fighting, we didn't see one act of violence, and that's what it'd be like here. This entire city, people will drive in from all the outlying areas, and the entire city will celebrate if this team was able to do that.
It would be awesome. And, I've written about this a bunch of times. It just seems like we need more Canadian hockey teams because, as we just covered, it just means more in Canada. Now it looks like Atlanta's coming to Winnipeg. Do you see maybe 2-3 more Canadian teams within 5 years, hopefully, maybe?
Well, they've got to make the case that it works. You've got to have the population base. It's not enough to be rabid fans. Winnipeg, it sounds like a team might end up there, but there's 775,000 people in Winnipeg. Quebec's even smaller, Quebec City. So you got to make the business case, I think, before you say, let's start plunking teams in. Let's someone make the case that they'll be sustainable there.
Okay. So you're saying you need hardcore proof that the numbers will work before you sign off.
Yep.
All right. Because my goal would be to have 2 12-team divisions. I think Montreal could carry 2 teams. Yeah,
everyone says Toronto could too, but I can tell you, Bill, we say the same thing there. If the league ever comes to us and said we want a second team in Toronto, then make the case. we have a waiting list for tickets, but there's not 17,000 accounts on it. We can't fill a second building. We have unsold inventory in terms of suites. So, this is not, everyone thinks Toronto's got everything sold. Let's put another team there. Not that clear, and it's not that clear. It wouldn't dramatically hurt the Buffalo Sabres to add a second team. So we've said the same thing. Make the case. You want more teams in Canada? Make the case.
Last thing, I know you got to go, and you'll have to come back on because I love talking to you. But one of the reasons I feel like hockey's is making a comeback, especially in America, is because like a sport like basketball, these guys can't settle their own stuff on the court. The referees have to come in and double flagrants and technicals, and it's like they're not handling their own business. And in hockey, they kind of went away from that a little bit, but now it's come back, and the guys settle their own business on the ice to some degree. And it just feels old school, and this is something you've been a big fan and proponent of. Do you feel like it's at a good place right now?
Yes, I do. I think we've gotten away from the 3-hour games that we had in the 70s, where fighting was a tactic. Yeah. And it was an excessive amount of fighting, and now we've gotten back to, I think, the proper level of fighting to regulate the other garbage that happens on the ice. I don't want to see more fighting, but I don't want to see it eliminated or curtailed in any way. And it does allow the players to regulate the amount of contact and violence that takes place on a sheet of ice. I think it's one of the great features of our game.
Yeah, because if you have a guy making a run at the goalie, the other guys are going to take care of it. They're not looking around waiting for the referee to take care of it. And
that's
I don't
right.
know, as a fan, I kind of appreciate it. Are you worried about this concussions going forward? Seems like it's your big issue, right?
Concussions are a problem for every sport. We're a full contact sport. We're going to have concussions. I think we've been ahead of the curve in terms of identifying them and treating them properly. I think the other sports are scrambling to catch up with us with 7-day waiting periods and quiet rooms. I like the NHL's lead on this.
Yeah. All right. Well, please come back because I need more time with you. But enjoy the rest of the playoffs. Maybe come back during the finals?
Anytime you want me to go on, Bill, I'll come on.
All right. And thank you for Tyler Sagan. We both made out well in that trade.
Thank you for Phil Kessel.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right, we're swinging from hockey to TV. I bet that sentence isn't said that often. On the line, one of our favorite TV critics, if not the favorite, from HitFix.com, Alan Sepinwall. He's been mired in upfront stuff for a couple weeks. Is it over?
Yeah, it's over. It ended yesterday. The CW had their upfront. The CW is kind of still sort of a network. Now we're done. Now we can just sort of start looking ahead to next season.
The CW has a down front. They don't have an up front.
They have something. They come out, they talk about how awesome they are, and then their shows all pull in like less than 3 million viewers. But somehow the business model works. I can't explain it. They would have to.
It's all people between the ages of 18 and 22 in the shows, right?
Largely, the weird thing is they brought in like a show with Sarah Michelle Gellar, which was supposed to be on CBS, and CBS didn't want it, and they picked it up. And I'm thinking, nobody who watches the CW has any idea who Sarah Michelle Gellar is. Yeah. Buffy was like generations ago as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, it might as well have been like, I'm trying to think of a Melrose Place character, Courtney Thorne-Smith for that generation. Let's talk about my big disappointment. ABC didn't pick up Poe. I was so fired up for Poe, the first ever drama about a 19th century detective. It sounded like the worst idea ever, and I was begging for it to get greenlit, and it did not. Tell me what happened.
The worst idea ever was doing a Wonder Woman show written by David E. Kelley, and thankfully that didn't get picked up, even though I was kind of looking forward to seeing Tyra from Friday Night Lights in the Wonder Woman costume.
Yeah, see, then that can't be the worst idea ever, because at least we had Tyra in a Wonder Woman costume. This one was about a 19th century detective. Not good.
You never know. The guy invented the detective novel. They could have done something with there. You're a writer. You have to have some kind of affection for Poe, right?
Oh, please. for an ABC show? Come on.
All right.
Tell me how, I guess, well, there's a couple of big questions. One, the Ashton Kutcher replacing Charlie Sheen. I thought Kimmel had a good joke about this, about how Ashton Kutcher's already replaced Bruce Willis or whatever he said.
That was definitely one of Kimmel's big laughs at the ABC upfront.
Yeah, that was a great one. Do people think this is going to work, Ashton Kutcher?
Yeah, I think so. What was weird was a couple days before that happened, the story leaked that they were talking to Hugh Grant, and that just seemed really like wildly out of the box and yet brilliant. And so I think a lot of people were disappointed when it wound up being Kutcher, but I mean, Ashton Kutcher could play this kind of part in his sleep. I mean, he was really good on that 70s show, even when that 70s show wasn't good. You can totally buy him as a player, seducing all these bimbos, probably easier than you could Charlie Sheen at Charlie Sheen's age. So why not?
What do you think is, like every year I've had a show on one of the 4 networks, and now I'm looking at 2011-12. And I don't feel like I have one scripted show because now Friday Night Lights has been canceled. Although I guess I've been watching them on DirecTV first. But, Lost got canceled and 24. And it's like, I don't really have that show that's on a network. Not cable, not basic, not pay cable. But is there going to be a show for me?
Well, Bill, I don't know why you're not watching Parks and Recreation. It just finished one of the all-time great sitcom seasons.
No, I'm talking about 1 hours.
1 hours, okay. It's not a great time for dramas. Definitely cable is kind of ascendant in terms of drama. And a lot of things the networks tried this year didn't work. Lone Star canceled after 2 episodes. Chicago Code after 13. So it's hard, and I got to say, looking at the new stuff, there's not a lot there that looked super exciting. NBC has this one show called Awake that looked good, but it's from the guy who did Lone Star, so I'm not getting my hopes up about how long it's going to last.
But I thought we think that guy's talented, though, right? Kyle Killen?
Yeah, no, I think Kyle Killen is really, really talented, but it's like 2 years in a row he's come up with what looks like the best new show, but also looks like this show that, what's going to happen if they get to episode 5? And Lone Star got canceled after episode 2, so we didn't have to worry about it.
Right. I
think he comes up with good ideas. I just don't know if they're long-term ideas, and we haven't had a chance to find out yet.
Well, it seems like people really like The Good Wife. And I remember watching a couple episodes, the first 3 episodes, and I fell off. I stopped watching it. And everybody, like you and some of your buddies who I respect, the TV critics, Goodman, Zoller Seitz, all these people like The Good Wife, and they were saying, somebody wrote a column saying that it was basically like the network version of The Wire, and I was like, whoa, hey, settle down. Do I have to catch up on the show?
As close as you can probably get on a network to The Wire, just in terms of sort of moral ambiguity and ambition and stuff like that. But I mean, it's a lawyer show. They go into court every week. They take cases. They usually win those cases. But there's a lot of complicated stuff going on in office politics and real politics. And that's a show that I remember I watched the pilot of a couple years ago and thought, all right, well, this is pretty well done. I'll never watch it again. And now it has actually become really, really good. So that is about as good as I think you can get these days within the confines of working on a network.
All right, so let's say I want to start watching that show. Do I have to start on season 2, or do I have to watch the whole thing?
I don't know that you have to watch the whole thing. You can sort of pick out isolated episodes. There's sort of ongoing elements, but it's not like The Wire where, if you start in episode 3, you're screwed. You'll figure it out wherever you jump in.
So cable has killed network TV is what you're telling us.
Cable has killed this kind of show on network TV because cable can do it better, and cable can get away with a much smaller audience.
Right,
Any show on a network that got the audience that The Wire did would have been canceled even before Lone Star was.
Right, and the irony is, Mad Men, 2.7 million viewers, I think, and 2 networks ripped off Mad Men.
Yeah, this is bizarre. NBC's doing this Playboy Club show. ABC's doing Pan Am, and you're right. Mad Men, I love Mad Men. Not a lot of people watch Mad Men. These shows are not going to be as good as that. Eddie Cibrian is not John Hamm in the Playboy Club.
What?
Amazingly, if you put Eddie Cibrian in the Don Draper role, it's not quite as exciting. I know it seems shocking.
Unless it's the Lifetime Network.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to rip off an AMC show, you would think you would rip off the zombie show.
Yeah, because that's the one really big hit.
Yeah. That's maybe the show I would be gravitating toward, not the period drama that, I think people, it's interesting. I wonder with these executives, do they make the mistake sometimes of overreacting to, the internet? Like Mad Men is the most dissected show right now of any drama, I think.
Yeah.
And network executives would look at that and be like, oh, Mad Men, we got to come up with a Mad Men. But the reality is it's geared toward a certain type of person. And
I remember, when The Sopranos was first big about 10 years ago, all the networks were like, well, how can we copy that? And the closest anybody got was NBC did this show called Kingpin that ran about 6 episodes, and it was pretty good given that it was on a network, but it was still, the audience is not big enough for that kind of show to support it on network TV.
They're bringing back Charlie's Angels, which was, a watershed show for us once upon a time. As Kimmel pointed out in the upfronts, though, we didn't have internet porn back then. So
yeah, I mean,
Charlie's Angels was as good as it got.
Yeah, Charlie's Angels back then, it was the easiest way to see attractive women not wearing a lot of clothing in your house, and that has changed quite a lot. So
yeah, we don't have Maxim. You don't have anything. So it's like I don't know how that show works, but at the same time, 3 female detectives made the Charlie gimmick, you never see him, that might be able to translate. I'm not willing to rule that out not working.
Yeah, I mean, the movie, which this is sort of more inspired by because Drew Barrymore's a producer, was a pretty big hit not that long ago. So maybe. I'm kind of bummed, though, that, like, of the two of them, Minka Kelly wound up with the show and Adrian Pulikis didn't get picked up.
Yeah, it's too bad that didn't get reversed. So they added, there's an African-American, one of the 3 now, right?
Yes.
That's their big change?
So far, and it looks like they're playing it straight. The movies were kind of goofy, and this didn't look like that. This just looked like Charlie's Angels in 2011.
I like the idea of having Chaz Bono play Charlie, though. I thought that was really interesting. How do you think he's going to do?
Chaz Bono, he's the gift that keeps on giving to you, isn't he, Bill?
I don't know. I was thinking of a Charlie. He was the first one that came up. I think this is going to do better than the Fantasy Island remake, which never made sense.
Probably, but, you know, the bar is low. I would have to look it up, but I'm thinking if ABC, any show today, did what Fantasy Island did when they did the remake, it would be a huge hit because just numbers keep going down.
I want to see the Good Times remake because they've been showing Good Times right around when I'm about to fall asleep. Some channel's showing them at 11, 11:30, and I've been watching them because I'm trying to figure out the actual percentage of shows where James thought he was going to get a job and bought something expensive and then didn't get the job. And I think it's about like 23%. But something about that show, maybe networks can't make it anymore because maybe that's just, they feel like it's a BET audience type of show. But that show's set in an urban setting with an African-American family, lower class, going through all the struggles, and there's comedy. And I mean, that's another show that nobody's making anymore, right?
Yeah, no, I know. Definitely, like, all the black sitcoms have moved over to cable. TBS has the Tyler Perry shows. BET picked up The Game, and The Game, I think the first episode they showed of that, got triple the audience it ever got on the CW. So there's an appetite out there. I just think the networks are kind of afraid to do those kinds of shows.
You afraid, or they're just not? They don't think there's any money in them?
I think that's where they're afraid that there isn't any money or that they don't know how to make money on them, whereas if you have a network specifically targeted at an African-American audience, it's easier for them to sell it than it would be for ABC to.
Tell me about NBC. They hired the guy from Showtime, which I thought was interesting because I would argue that being the head of Showtime is a better job than being the head of NBC. Maybe, am I naive?
No, I think I imagine the money is probably better at NBC, but the ease and sort of the restrictions would be much better at Showtime. But they're taking some swings. The clips they showed didn't look incredibly exciting other than, again, the Kyle Killen show Awake. But I got to wait to see pilots moving on. But, I mean, they got a lot of holes, and right now they're hoping that The Voice is a huge hit for a long time, and that'll pave over a lot of other problems.
Is The Voice that show that has Carson Daly and Christina Aguilera on it?
Yeah, and CeeLo. Don't forget CeeLo.
That show's not going to be a long hit for a long time. I hate to break it to them.
Amazingly, the public appetite for singing competitions is deeper than you or I might realize.
Have the ratings been good?
Ratings have been really good.
Really?
The ratings have been so good that, like, suddenly people are asking if Fox should be worried about the Simon Cowell show, which has basically the same format. Cause
where have I been? I had no idea the show was doing well.
You've been watching playoffs for 18 weeks.
I watched it. I actually put on The Voice the other night because my wife wanted to see Christina Aguilera, and we watched like a half hour of it. We thought it was awful.
The
Maybe
Voice
I need
is
to watch
the
it again.
only hit of the 2010-2011 TV season.
So maybe we should just have singing competitions nonstop.
Pretty much, yeah, until people get sick of them, and I don't know when that's going to happen.
Are you surprised that people feel like I just read the Hollywood Reporter's oral history of American Idol's comeback year? I don't know if you read this. Did you read this?
Yeah, I saw it.
I think oral history. I think oral was a good term, but it was very, very, very complimentary, and everybody just couldn't be more delighted with how the season went. I just feel like they had more talent than they've had in year past, and you know the biggest problem with last season was they had to rush the process of actually in each city, finding the people, and I think that they just didn't have enough talent. This year they've had the talent, but, other than the fact that J-Lo looks fantastic, Steven Tyler might say something crazy every once in a while. Does anybody actually, is anyone hinging on what the judges say this year?
I actually think the judges have been pretty terrible, and the show has been kind of working in spite of them. I mean, yeah, J-Lo looks fantastic, and this has been a great career move for her, and, suddenly she's been reinvented after everybody forgot about her. But it's like none of them have anything interesting or useful to say. Every contestant is always, this is the best you've ever done, you're fantastic, you're an artist, you're brilliant, and then they're shocked and amazed when somebody has to go home every week. It got really frustrating. I actually stopped watching a few weeks ago just because I couldn't take it anymore. Because nobody was doing anything. None of the singers were doing anything interesting because none of the judges were giving them any good feedback to respond to.
Yeah, we were DVRing it and basically just fast forwarding through the whole show and stopping 3 times to hear the 3 people we wanted to hear. But I fast forwarded over every judge. Like Randy, I'm just at this point you could just CGI him and probably figure out what he was 98% of what he's going to say. J-Lo's magnificent. She looks great. She's very supportive. I don't know how much of an actress she is, but she does a nice job at least pretending to empathize when people get, she cries and it really seems like she feels it. Tyler's kind of funny. You never know what he's thinking. The Randy hole is just a massive hole, though, and I don't see how they bring him back.
Well, what was hilarious was there was this point very early in the season where I think he sort of realized that Tyler and J-Lo were never going to say anything negative, and so suddenly it had to fall on him to be the bad cop. And he did it for about 2 weeks, and people just kept booing him, and so finally he just gave up.
All right, man, you did your thing. You're in it to win it.
Exactly, in it to win it. Oh my God,
he's terrible. He just needs to go. It's like, come on.
It's institutional memory. He's been there since the beginning. They got to have a legacy, Bill.
I know.
I don't know.
The problem is, and this is why I thought the show was never going to make it without Simon. But with Simon, you really were hinging on his thoughts, and you were like, all right, I'm not sure if that was good or not, but Simon is going to tell me. And now they have no judge that does that. But the performances have been so interesting. And, some of the drama they had, Pia got voted off too early, and Casey almost collapsed on the stage. And so on. This James Durbin who's battling Tourette's. He makes it to the Final Four. The storylines were great. And even little young Haley, who kind of turned into a little Spitfire as the season went along. Yeah. She makes it to the Final 3. She's sassy. I felt like she was the only one on this whole show that legitimately and noticeably got better.
Yeah, and that's been the problem with the judges, because you would see in years past when Simon would yell at people and say, all right, you need to stop doing this and change it up, they would. And none of the judges do that. So, Scotty McCreery is going to win this season. He's given, the same 3 performances over and over and over again for 3 months now.
With the same 4 head bobs.
Yeah, he's crooked. He holds the microphone like a flute. It's really uncomfortable to watch him.
You know what, though? I was answering emails during the last show, and I was looking down and just listening to one of the songs he sang, and he does have a nice voice. I think he will have a career as a singer. You'll hear him on the radio and think that he has a good voice.
Absolutely, although I saw an interesting article from someone who surveyed, producers and DJs at a bunch of country stations, and they all hate him, which surprised me.
Because he doesn't wear a hat. He's breaking the hat code.
I don't know if it's that or just what we think of as authentic country, if we're not a country fan, is different from what real country fans think.
It's also funny because he's 13 years old and he's singing these songs about, and then when my wife left me, and I developed a drinking problem, and it's all right, you're 16.
Ladies love Scotty McCreery. I can't explain it, but it's there.
They do. Lauren will have no career whatsoever. I do think Haley might have some sort of disco album or something. The one, I'll never get over the Pia thing. I don't know what she did wrong. Everyone says she didn't connect with the audience. I think that's utter BS. I think just people thought she was safe and forgot to vote for her.
Yeah, I think if Simon was there, that wouldn't have happened, because either he would have praised her, out of proportion to some other people, and people would have voted along that, or he would have sort of criticized her, and that would have warned her fan base. But nobody ever criticizes anybody, so that doesn't happen.
She also she didn't learn a lesson from Catherine McPhee. You gotta you got to unleash it every once in a while. You can't be wearing those Amish dresses or whatever weird. At some point, you got to at least say, hey, here I am. Look at this.
Catherine McPhee's actually got a show this year. She's on one of the NBC mid-season things called Smash. She's like a young Broadway, up-and-coming actress.
Oh. Yeah, Pia was a big loss. I really miss, I think I've said this to you already, but I really miss Simon the most for Casey, who I just thought was laborious, and I think he's going to end up being on a cruise ship or somewhere where he's basically like the old Bill Murray's 1970s Nick the Lounge Singer skits. That was Casey. And everyone was like, oh, Casey, you're such a genius. You played the oboe. Or, Simon would have just ripped him up.
I think there's a lot of contestants like that where you like the idea of them. Oh, somebody's playing Nirvana. Oh, my God, Nirvana on American Idol. But he was sometimes okay, sometimes not.
Yeah, mostly not. Mostly not. Let's be honest. Like, this whole point of the show is to find somebody who can make an album that's going to sell.
Yeah, which they haven't been able to do in a while now.
Right. I do think James Durbin potentially could be the lead singer of some sort of band that plays like that Limp Bizkit type of music. What do you think?
Possibly. He was definitely one of my favorites going into the year.
I think I gotta be honest, I think he made a tactical error. Like, after he got voted off, they did his whole story, and he's like, I had Tourette's, and I was beat up as a kid, and I was bullied, and this is the first time, and in my opinion, you got to play that card not as you're getting voted off.
Well, yeah, they talked about it a lot. I don't know about the bullying part, but the Tourette's and the Asperger's and all that. The
bullying part, though, they needed to.
Okay.
That's the part where it's like, all right, because I started to feel with him like he was going to win it. I forgot that he was an underdog and that this was a guy who'd been through a lot of stuff in his life, and he was like a really good story. And his story somehow got lost a little bit, and he just became the guy who was, who was pushing the envelope with the heavy metal, and the guy who was like crying every time somebody got voted off. He'd be sobbing, and people forgot. Like, all right, you know what? I got to root for this guy. This guy needs to win. It would be an awesome story, and that's what they missed with that. But my theory, anyway, he should have won. I feel like he should have been the winner of this, and Scott McCreery is going to win, and he's going to make those weird George Bush facial expressions for the next 20 years. And we're not going to know what to expect. Tell me about The Killing. Where are you standing these days? I'm really, really frustrated with The Killing. AMC's been on such a streak for a while that I had such high hopes, but it's a real chore at this point. If you're going to tell one story over a 13-episode season, you either have to give me a really good plot, or you have to go really, really deep on the characters. And they haven't really done either one. It's just sort of dragging along, and I have no idea who any of these people are or why I'm supposed to care. So the last 3 episodes could have been condensed into one episode. Yeah. It's fat. It's a fat show. I still like it. I still like watching it, but now I'm at the point where I just want to know who did it. Exactly. It looks great. I like a couple of the performances, and I'll stick with it till the end because I want to see if they knew what they were doing. But it's very hard work to get there. You know Jacoby's theory, right? What's Jacoby's theory? Jacoby thinks the redheaded cop, her fiancé, that was the killer. Well, that guy always plays like the lunatic or the killer and everything else, so I could see that. But that would seem really silly just in the context of this show at this point. Well, let me throw this fact at you. When they sent out a screener before they, well before the show aired, it had a note in it. One of these parts has been recast. They recast the fiancé between what they filmed and what actually went up in episode 1. Why did they recast it? Not that big of a part. I don't know. Every version I've seen had him in it, but Sepinwall's coming around. Yeah, it's pretty interesting that they recast it. Possibly. Then there's also doesn't seem like the kind of part you would usually put that guy in. I will say that. Why does it seem like you know the answer? Have you seen all of these yet? I've not seen all of these yet. I've only seen through this Sundays, which tells you nothing. So. Oh, it's another waste of an episode? It's. I don't want to say too much. I'm just sort of at the point now where I'm just sort of sitting back, waiting to get to the end. You're frustrated. You might be dipping back into the old law. You might run back Lost. I'm getting that feeling in your voice. Oh yeah, somebody got me an iPad recently, and the Netflix Instant app has every episode of Lost on it. It's a really dangerously addictive thing to have at your fingertips. Might be disappointing though to rewatch those.
Maybe, or maybe I'll sort of, if you go in knowing that they're not going to explain most of this stuff, maybe you focus on the other things and it's better. Well, be an interesting experiment to find out.
Yeah, I'm really sad what's happened to these 1 hour shows. I can't watch Game of Thrones.
Why can't you watch Game of Thrones, Bill?
I don't like to go into that weird era where we're in the forest a lot. I don't like to be in the forest. I like to watch shows where I can imagine I'm in the show.
So if it was going to be a fantasy, you'd want it to be an urban fantasy, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Like shows like The Borgias and what's that Gladiator show on Stars, whatever that show is.
Spartacus.
I don't want to watch those shows.
I will say I don't usually like those shows, but I do like Game of Thrones. It feels like sort of a cut above those. So
I'm ready for a great HBO show. We're due. We're overdue for HBO to just come out with some show that everybody goes, oh yeah, they're the master. I forgot how good HBO can be. When's that going to happen?
Well, I mean, I think Game of Thrones could be that show. Your opinion differs. And I also really like Boardwalk Empire more than you did, just because I got over the Buscemi thing. I think HBO's mounted a pretty good comeback the last couple of years. Because there was that period there where everyone's like, ooh, Showtime is better than HBO. And nobody's saying that anymore.
Comeback, huh? What are the 5 points of that comeback?
Let's see. They've got a new David Simon show on, even though Treme is not quite The Wire. They got Boardwalk Empire. They've got Game of Thrones. They've got the new David Milch horse racing show coming up with Dustin Hoffman and Nick Nolte.
I'm excited for that one.
Yeah. I'm just excited to see a making of documentary about it because you've got Hoffman, Nolte, Milch, who's kind of crazy and has a weird process, Michael Mann, who's kind of crazy and has a weird process, all these combustible personalities together. That could be the greatest making of documentary of all time. Forget about what the actual show is. Didn't
Michael Mann and David Milch butt heads on that?
That's what I heard, and eventually it was like they basically had to have an official separation of powers where just Milch writes and Mann directs, and they don't have to interact or something.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, you're right. That would be a good oral history. Yeah, I'm fairly excited for that one. The problem with I feel like when you look at Sopranos and The Wire, they haven't had a show on that level. Everything else has been a little more polarizing, and then. So you're in on Treme still?
I'm in on Treme. I mean, I sort of accept what it is, and I like it for that. So,
because now you're the third person I know who watches Treme, and I know probably thousands of people. It seems like it's a very small cluster left of people that are watching this show, but they'll never pull it off.
Well, they at least renewed it for a third season, which surprised me. But I guess they really like being in business with David Simon.
It almost seems like it's like his bonus payment for The Wire.
Exactly. I mean, if a guy gave you the greatest show of all time, you're going to sort of, give him a longer leash with the next thing.
I'm not against Treme. I tried to watch it, and one of my goals with a television show is I need to be entertained in some way, and I just wasn't entertained. I'm sure other people are. I just didn't
I like
really
the
personally
characters.
like
I love the music and the atmosphere. Even though there's really not any kind of plot, I enjoy watching it. It's not like out of loyalty to Simon. I enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, it is a little bit out of loyalty, though. If it was David Johnson who created and did this show, would you feel that invested? I mean,
if he did it on this level, yeah. I think it's well put together. I've never been to New Orleans, and I watched the show, and I feel like I have, and B, really want to go now. So,
so you're in on Treme.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Give me two other shows that are on your DVR that you're excited about right now.
Well, I mean, the season's coming to an end, so most of what I really like, Community and Parks and Rec are probably my two favorites right now, and they both just wrapped up their seasons. Now I got to get ready for the summer. Breaking Bad is coming back, and that is what I'm super pumped for. So, but that's probably not for another couple of months.
And you love Justified, right? You love the
season. Yeah, oh my God, Justified that's a show that took the leap from year one to year two. So that went from a pretty good show to a kick-ass show.
Really? Top five?
Yes.
Top five for you?
Yeah, probably.
Who is the best actor on television right now?
Bryan Cranston.
Number two?
Probably John Hamm. I mean, if we're just talking dramatic.
Huh. Is there a number three?
There's a lot. Are we counting Kyle Chandler? Do we consider Friday Night Lights to be on now, or are we treating it as... Yeah,
Kyle Chandler is now a J.J. Abrams movie character.
Yeah, and as soon as I found out he was in that movie, my interest in seeing that movie went way up.
I have some news for you.
What's that?
There's a lot of rumors going around that there might be a Friday Night Lights movie.
I would see another Friday Night Lights movie if it involved these characters.
I'm not sure we've seen the last of these characters. That's all I'm saying. I'll leave you on that.
Okay.
Alan Sepinwall, we will check you out on hitfix.com. And hopefully, at some point, The Killing will have a good episode and you can write something good about it.
I'm living in hope, Bill.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at PodCenter at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.